we are back with the Dr. Joe Show, talking about Alzheimer's and the trials and the volunteers that need to join these trials so that we can put this behind us, put it in the rearview mirror.
Yeah,
right?
For generations, for your children as well. So, Dr. Marks, how do people get involved in these trials?
First of all, you need to acknowledge there's a problem. And normal aging is a term which probably is not all that helpful. I take care of 95-year-olds who are probably sharper than I am. That might be more common on me than them. But the point being that it's not inevitable that you have forgetfulness in the way we normally think of it. It's just that it's a very common disease. At the age of 85, 1/3 of all people in the United States have Alzheimer's disease clinically. So it's extremely common. At the age of 90, it's 1 in 2.
Wow.
So when a 90-year-old says, well, a lot of my friends are forgetful, I go, yep. But anyway, which means that there's a 1 in 4 chance that a couple will both have it. Wow. Which is hard on the kids.
Wow.
So the reason to be in a clinical trial, I found that the greatest generation, who were the people mostly in the trials early on, although that's moved on, I'm now seeing boomers, people younger than I do who have it, which is sobering, is that they had a sense of social purpose. They had a sense of the greater good. And to be in a trial, I always tell people, if you're going to walk in and say, oh, you're going to cure my Alzheimer's, doc, I go, not really. First of all, we're going to try to slow it down, not stop it. Number two, if that's your goal, that's probably not a good idea. That what you really need to do is to do it for the greater good. Now, the greater good may be that 10 other members of your extended family going back 2 generations on both sides have had it, in which case everybody down the road has a very high risk, not a certainty, but a high risk of getting it. You may have friends who had it. You may have had a very good friend who had it. So you're taking one for the giver, that you're taking one for the team.
Yeah.
And so I always tell people you need to have that civic sense. What I will tell you is people that engaged in clinical trials are extremely monitored closely. So it's some of the best medical care you'll ever get, because every time you burp, we need to know whether it's due to the drug or just you were going to burp anyway.
Right.
So as a matter of fact, that's how the side effects get figured out when you look at the little 2-point font sheet that comes with a new medication. It came from the drug trials. So anyway, so I would want people to have a proper sense of why to get involved. Proper meaning that they do it for the greater good as well as themselves. We certainly hope it helps them, obviously, but that cannot be the only goal. These are mostly double-blind, placebo-controlled trials, meaning that me giving the drug and the person getting it doesn't know whether they're getting active drug or saltwater solution. These are IV drugs. And it's done on purpose, so there's no cheerleader effect, the placebo effect. And for most trials, there's a period of time when you are on active drug or placebo, and after 1.5 years, you get switched to active drug if you were on placebo, and you continue on active drug if you were on active drug. In other words, you don't go without something forever. The exception to that is in trials that are for people who do not have symptoms yet. And those trials are not crossover designed. In other words, you're either on placebo or active drug for the entire time. And the reason for that is that you don't have a disease yet that's manifest by clinical symptoms. And if you do suddenly show some symptoms of worsening dementia, at that point, you can then get the symptomatic medications. I don't want to make it too complicated, but people say, how can they get in the trial? The name of the trial that's for family members who don't have any symptoms yet is called the AHEAD trial. We started doing clinical trials in Plymouth back many years ago because it was very difficult for people to commute through Boston traffic to get to the teaching hospitals. To this day, I have colleagues at Mass General who will send me patients because they live down our way because it's just too hard to go in and out. So I'm in practice for 36 years in Plymouth. You can look me up and call our office if you're interested in this. There are websites for the AHEAD trial if you want to look at it. It's AHEAD. And
is this a national?
It's a national. It's a national. Yes,
We have national listeners really all over.
Yes, there are about 50 trial centers. Most of them are academic centers. There's a few of us that are not, and we're very pleased to be able to offer this. And so anyway, the point is that it's readily accessible if you just with minimal effort look online at the AHEAD trial. There are also many, many other drug trials for people who already have symptoms, as I was alluding to earlier. We have this newest drug that was approved that I said is a bunt single. Yeah. But if you want to see if you can get a double or a triple or even a home run, there are other drugs that are enrolling, and we strongly urge people to consider that. There are people who will say, no, I'll take the bunt single. Okay. But it's expensive, as we've talked about a little bit already. It's in a state of flux as to how that cost will come down and who will pay for it. I don't think anybody's going to be charged $56,000 out of pocket to do it. So we'll see where that goes.
AHEAD, I like that. That's easy to remember. It makes sense.
Right, exactly.
It's for AHEAD.
Yep.
Get ahead.
Yep.
I love it. And all of the trials can be found through you, Dr. Marks, in Plymouth?
Yes. And also, if you go to clinicaltrials.gov, it's the national website for all clinical trials. It's pretty easy to use. You just put in Alzheimer's, and it'll tell you tons of places that are doing trials of different types of trials.
Okay. So this may have answered the first question from the IM. So the IM, has two rules. Because the 4 domains interconnect, your home, your social, the I see, how I see myself, how I think other people see me, and the biological domain, which we're talking a lot about tonight. Small changes can have big effects. You don't need to change everything. Dr. Marks, what small change can you recommend to our listeners so that they can manage Alzheimer's if it's in their family?
Well, I think the first thing is to realize that denial is not just a river in Egypt.
That's right.
And that is the major impediment. And it's not just the families and the people who are exhibiting symptoms. It's the medical profession as well. The primary care doctors are busy. Some of them don't have the knowledge or interest to pursue this. You need to be your own advocate. But I would say that if you're in your 60s, even late 50s, and having significant memory problems for reasons that you can't explain. Look, if you're not sleeping but 2 hours a night because you've got untreated sleep apnea from weighing 500 pounds over what you should, that's going to cause you to have memory impairment. But assuming that there's no clear reason for it, then you need to tell your doctor, look, I think that I'm having memory problems. Can you do some screening tests? And if the screening tests are positive, then ask that you be sent to the next step.
Are organizations like AARP or other things, would you recommend them? Are they helpful? Should people join up?
Yes, the AARP is useful, but the biggest organization is the Alzheimer's Association. It has one of the deepest, widest websites of any disease state I've ever seen, for that matter, any website. If you want to get into the weeds of arcane new research development, stuff that I work with and my peers who are involved in research work with, it's there. If you want just simpler things about how do I do this, how do I do that, how do I handle this financial situation, how do I handle bathing with a more advanced patient, it's all in there.
Wow.
So what's that website again?
It's
The
Alzheimer's.org, I believe.
Alzheimer's.org.
Yeah.
Really important resource for people.
Yeah.
The second truth of the IM, because everybody's interested in what other people think or feel about them, and you're part of someone's home or social domain, it has an effect on the biological domain, the way you see them, because you know it feels differently if you're treated with respect or disrespect. You control no one, but you influence everyone. You get to choose the kind of influence you want to be. Dr. Marks, what kind of influence are you hoping to be?
Doctor comes from the same root word as educator. And what I would hope to accomplish is to just increase people's awareness so they can then be enfranchised to take action on their own. That there's a certain amount of basic knowledge about the existence of this disease and where it's going in terms of our treatment that people just need to know exists. And if I can do anything to make that happen, if by telling whoever is listening to this what's going on and have them each tell somebody else, that's probably the best we can do. I do view a lot of this as retail, if you will. It's one-on-one. I spend an hour and a half with a new Alzheimer's patient and their family. I do it in part because some of it is subsidized by the clinical research. It allows me to do it. It leads to a place where people feel that they're compassionately and completely cared for, that they're listened to, that we have time to address a multitude of questions, the sort of questions you guys were asking tonight. And it allows them to move forward and not to just be in panic. And I think that, that's what we try to accomplish.
So there's hope?
Oh, definitely.
Would you have said that 10 years ago?
Oh, even 10 years ago, I said there was hope. But the problem was the hope was just beyond our grasp. What the hope is now is that we're now going to do combination therapy, where we'll be using this type of drug and maybe an anti-tau drug, as I talked about earlier. And it may be that the way forward is that by perhaps prematurely allowing the anti-amyloid drugs to be approved, that then will allow, as an existing approved drug, for another experimental drug to be added on, because you won't be on 2 experimental drugs at the same time. So this is what we all have been hoping for the last 10 years, and it's finally happening.
It's happening.
So exciting.
So we started off talking about cancer and the difficulty. All those years ago, people didn't talk about it, but now it looks like something's on the horizon.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for leading the way with that and helping people. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for the opportunity.
All right, folks. We'll be back next week with the Dr. Joe Show. Thanks, everybody.
Stretch the